So the purpose of this proposal is to restrict propagation of the BGP announcement of address space not yet issued by AFRINIC. AFRINIC to create ROAs and origin ASO zeros for all unassigned address space. For space to be issued, ROAs with origin of ASO will have to be revoked, and ROAs with origin of ASO must not be visible to the RPKI repositories. And I would leave the floor, or give the floor to the authors to discuss this policy. Thank you.
Okay. This is a really short presentation. I think it's in total four or five slides. So I am trying to go slowly so the translation is easier, because it's a bit complex topic if you are not really operating networks and do routing and so on. And I talked during the break with some people that don't really have the experience to understand this. There is a concept which is bogon. Bogon is any space that is not being assigned, is not allocated, and some people maybe use that space to announce typically bad things. Okay, sometimes it's used for good things, but in general it should not be that way. So since we started working in all the regions in RPKI, there are different documents giving us good practices about how to do that, and of course all the registries are trying to push RPKI up front. And the idea of this policy proposal is to take advantage of that and to take advantage of the definition that it is in one of the RFCs. I have one slide at the end to show you that, for creating a special ROA for which origin AS0. So what that means? That means that today, typically we use Bogon's list or manual filtering or a combination of both to avoid those prefixes coming into our networks. If instead of that, we give the mandate to AFRINIC to use a specific AS0 ROA, then that can be automatically done for all those in the community that use RPKI. And again, RPKI should be something that everybody should be using, okay? Because it's providing an increase of security in your network. So I said it already. Basically, this proposal is telling AFRINIC to create a ROA for all unallocated and unassigned addressing space that is under the control of AFRINIC, okay? So if we succeed to do this in every region, it is of a big benefit for all the internet. Even if we only do this in one region, it's already 20% benefit. So clearly there is a benefit every time one registry is doing the same. What happens basically is that if you have this ROA and you have a prefix that today is not allocated to a specific member of AFRINIC, that ROA take preference. But if tomorrow AFRINIC allocates one part of that to one new member or an existing member, automatically takes over the preference of the one using RPKI that got the authorization to use that prefix, so that got the prefix from AFRINIC. So because today we don't have any policy about this, I don't have, as in my previous presentations, 2 columns, I have just one slide, which I think it should be in a new section. This is up to the staff to decide how better fits in the actual manual, but clearly for me it's a new section, which has this text. And being almost the last slide, I think I can take the time to read it slowly and I am not sure anyway the translation will be good because it's very technical, but we will respond to questions afterwards. So the section title will be RPKI ROAs for unallocated and unassigned AFRINIC addressing space. And the text of this section will say, AFRINIC will create ROAs which origin AS0 for all the unallocated and unassigned address space of course both IPv4, IPv6, for which is the current administrator. Any resource holder can create AS0 for the resources they have under their own administrative control, let's say. An RPKI ROA is a positive attestation that the prefix holder has authorization, has authorized an AS to originate a route for this prefix to the global BGP routing table. An RPKI ROA for the same prefixes which AS0 origin shows the contrary. So it's a negative intent from the resource holder to have the prefixes advertising in the global BGP. Only AFRINIC has authority to create RPKI ROA for the address space not yet allocated or assigned to its members. If AFRINIC wants to allocate address space to one of its members, the RPKI ROA or ROAs which origin AS0 will have to be revoked beforehand. But if this is not done, as I just explained it, never mind, because it takes preference the positive attestation. Address space can only be allocated once ROA or ROAs which origin AS0 have been fully removed and are not visible in the repositories. And, sorry, wrong button. This has reached with the exact text consensus in AFRINIC. It has been sent to RIPE and to LACNIC. It got no negative feedback in any region. And we are also sending this to ARIN. The idea is that we have, if possible, the same text in all the regions. So in the future, we can consider even a global policy. It's not needed, but it will be nice probably, and we can probably do better things if we have a global policy. But at the moment, any region that want to go for their own policy on this, that's the idea of having the same text. And before responding to questions that probably will come to this, I have extracted from RFC 6483 the most relevant text. And this relevant text is in section 4, which basically is telling what I just explained. Even if we have a ROA which AS0, which is an attestation by the holder of the prefix that should not be used for routing, when a specific member get a more specific prefix, they can positively say, hey, this is my prefix, so the AS0 takes less preference than his own announcement, okay? And from my side, that's it.
Thank you very much. We go for staff assessment.
Thank you, Jody. So staff went through the policy proposal, and we understand that the proposal requires AFRINIC to create ROAs with origin AS0 for all its unallocated and unassigned IPv4 and IPv6 space that it currently administers. Our definition, I mean, the AFRINIC definition of unallocated and unassigned space means available and reserved space as per the AFRINIC extended delegated stats file. And for that to happen, so we have AFRINIC, the RIL, which has to become the resource holder so that it creates the AS0 ROAs for the resources that it has under its account or administration, not the current AFRINIC at the moment, that's corporate. And only AFRINIC, the RIL, shall have the authority to create the RPKI ROAs for address space, not yet allocated or assigned to its members. And when AFRINIC allocates address space to one of its resource members, the RPKI ROA or ROAs with origin AS0 covering the space will first have to be revoked and not to be visible in the repositories. So, couple of clarifications. So the statement that the author made in his, the authors made in their proposal, address space management by AFRINIC, which is either unallocated or unassigned, is considered a bogon address space. So can you please clarify the source of this statement? Did you take it anywhere? Okay, all right. So we have to inform you that we do not have these statuses like unallocated or unassigned. So we gave you the definition. And yeah, okay. So the point number 4 here, IXPs at the moment create ROAs with their AS0 for their peering LAN. But in your explanation, you were AS0 for undelegated space. So that's something we have to keep into consideration when we in case we're implementing this policy. And in point number 5, you mentioned AFRINIC style. Is that a typo?
That is a typo.
Okay.
It was AFRINIC, of course. So we corrected it in the last version.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So the implementation will impact on several of our systems. The AFRINIC resource inventory tool, which is work in progress at the moment, the WHOIS database, MyAFRINIC portal, as well as the RPKI interface on the MyAFRINIC portal. So regarding the implementation timelines, AFRINIC Secretariat will be informing the PDP on the timelines. Okay, thank you.
Can we go to the previous slide, please?
Yes.
Can we go to the previous slide, please? Previous. No. Your slides.
Oh.
Impact analysis.
Yes, item number 4. IXP at the moment create ROAs with AS0. So what's the problem with you in this? What's the problem for AFRINIC?
No, it's not a problem for AFRINIC per se. We already know the IXPs are creating ROAs with AS0. This proposal comes in to say AFRINIC creates ROAs with AS0 for the unallocated prefixes. So we were just telling the authors about that, the IXP, and then we as well at AFRINIC, we have to take these into consideration when implementing. Yeah, so it's something worth noting as from now.
Yeah, it's not a problem. It's something that we need to understand. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. You want to say something? I want to add one more clarification. If we can go back to my slides, just to make sure that I didn't confuse anyone. Let's suppose we do this. Let's suppose we go for this ROA. There are 2 cases when AFRINIC allocates new space, okay? One case is I get new space from AFRINIC, At the moment, that space is part of the ASN AS0, okay? And I am going to announce that space tomorrow, one day after. And AFRINIC is only deprecating the ROA every other month, for example. If I am using RPKI, no problem, because my ROA takes precedence over the AS0, okay? But if I am not using RPKI, I will not be able to announce the space until AFRINIC withdraws it, removes it, okay? So there is a simple solution for that. When you request a space, if you really want to use the next day or the next month, and you are not using RPKI, which hopefully is not the case, but if you don't want or you cannot use RPKI, you need to do a special request to AFRINIC that they withdraw that certificate overnight to cover your space, okay? That solves the problem. So we didn't want to enter into that detail in the policy because we understand it's an operational detail that AFRINIC will need to take in consideration, same as APNIC is doing. That's the only thing that can confuse people. Yeah, of course, as authors, we believe that, and actually is what all the registries are doing, including AFRINIC, we should encourage the deployment of RPKI. So this also helps deploying RPKI because the natural thing to do is you are a new member, please start already using RPKI since day one, not do it after 2 years from now, right? So that's the ideal situation. But in case you cannot do that, you just need to request AFRINIC, please, I am going to announce this overnight. I have checked with many people, many staff from different registers. I have not checked with AFRINIC itself, but typically when a member gets new resources, typically takes several months until they start announcing it. So it should not be a problem anyway, okay?
Thank you very much, Jody. Reactions from the floor or remote participation? Or remote participants? Yes, Alan.
Okay, Alain Aina. This proposal, okay, by default has no issue per se, but to follow up on what you said, that if you get a new resource and then AFRINIC has to withdraw the ROA, etc., then it remind me that we are getting, and we should not forget. I'm not saying that, but we should not forget that up to now, some of the bogon filtering, okay, when you get on the bogon, sometimes it's difficult to be removed. And here also, be careful because for AFRINIC to revoke the ROA is one thing, but sometimes you have no assurance that all the caches in the world. So you may have some delays that before either the certificate expire or the ROA itself expired. So it's not that simple. But I'm not saying it's a problem here, but I think we have to look at it technically speaking. And as you said, I don't know why this could have been a global policy. Okay, instead of going region by regions. Okay, is it a reason why?
No. Okay, I agree with what you said of the catches. We are talking about typically 1 or 2 days maximum, but 2 days. But again, the thing is that most of the time when a new member or an existing member get new resources, usually they don't announce in 2 days, so it should not be a problem. Okay, yes. Should not.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that these 2 days, I don't know where you get the 2 days from, but the operational experience saw that you never control how people run their own cash.
Of course.
And what we are seeing now, because people are not, okay, the deployment of RPKI is still going on. There are some people who don't really care. okay, to see. So you may have issue of operating visibility at the time. So I'm just saying,
I think in part it's a matter of communication. Regarding the global policy, at the moment, we don't have the intent to go for a global policy. You know,
Okay.
this takes another process, but what we are trying to do is, just in case, keeping the same text in different regions, just in case, because that will help. That's the thing. But probably we don't need a global policy, but if we have the same text in 5 regions, why not? Okay?
Okay. The other idea behind going for global policies, okay, I don't know if you know that the SADA working group adopted in 2012 RFC 6491, asking IANA to do the same, but it had never happened. So it had never happened. IANA had never done this one. Okay. So the point here, we are now doing this at the RIA level, but we have not, we are not pushing it to happen so that's why I'm saying that if we want to solve problems, let's see the global pictures and we're trying to address this.
Next one. Cheers, next.
Yeah, sorry, the front mic. We're consulting.
Good evening. My name is Chris from Nigeria. I took time to go through your proposal, and I think it's a good one. But I want you to look at some key factors I consider critical to me, like when you're talking about withdrawing unallocated space. So my concern is, for what is your validity period or window for you to determine that this is not useful to the person who was originally assigned to use it before AFRINIC takes it back as a free space? So that is my concern. So what is the validity period?
I
The
don't
time
understand,
frame. What is the
because
time
we are not talking about withdrawing the space. We are talking about withdrawing the ROA.
Okay, we're going to.
So
Okay,
you withdraw
okay,
the ROA.
okay.
You exclude from the ROA the space that you allocated, and you create a new one.
Okay, okay, okay.
So there is no timing. The timing is basically what Alan commented, the catches, but you have a way to escape from that. If you really need to announce the prefix tomorrow,
Okay.
use RPKI, done.
Oh, in that case, I think I'm good to go with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Based on my understanding, the ROAs are more of like a central authentication database, isn't it? Good. And the AS0 network doesn't really exist in network. Yeah. Now, this is more of like mopping up both, or trying to look at the used allocated resources, the IP addresses, and unused, isn't it? In which both the AFRINIC or any other registry, as well as the resource holder, can have or create those databases, right? Good. I'm looking at this, comparing it with some of the existing policies on ground, like the review policy that intends to try to checkmate some of the resource holders that pile up those resources that are not unused or assigned. So are you looking at this to be a substitute? Because you can easily use this to actually audit, right? So are you using this policy, okay, as an alternative to the one that is currently under proposal, that's the review? Because if it's passed, you can actually use it for auditing, okay? Secondly, the other question that comes in with our global policy, I want to ask the dynamics in terms of these policies for each region, because if approves it, AFRINIC approves it and etc., does it really means that all regions, it will scale up or perform very well in all regions? For example, it depends on the intent of why you are creating it anyway. So I need a bit clarification from this point.
What happens if you have this policy in one region, because we have 5 regions, is that you are preventing, let's say, 20% of possible hijacks using bogon space.
Yes.
If you get 2 regions, 40%, and so on. If we get all the regions, fantastic. We can prevent 100% hijack of using bogons for those using RPKI. If you are not using RPKI, you don't take advantage of that. So it doesn't harm. Okay?
Yeah, but what I'm saying here is that, for example, now, considering the AFRINIC region and some of the earlier proposals in Uganda that, oh, we're running out of space, we're running out of IPv4 space, okay? Then there are other spaces available in other regions, okay? So technically speaking, I could say that creating the ROAs for a region that has the resources is more beneficial than creating it in a region that doesn't even have the resources. Because if you don't have the resources, why do you need to create the database of unallocated resources?
Oh, yeah. No. I was not understanding you well. This works for IPv4 and IPv6, of course.
Okay, for example, yes. What I'm saying is that based on when I started, the ROAs are central authentication database, isn't it? Right?
Root origin.
Right?
Yes.
Good. So now, basically, you want to have a database of all unassigned and all allocated resources, address spaces.
Yes.
V4, V6, and etc. So, and from your argument, this same policy has been passed in other regions.
Already in AFRINIC at the moment,
Exactly,
yes.
exactly. So now, what can you say? Because we are already running out of space. Because let's say we have our 3-point-something% or 4% of the address space.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why do you need to start thinking of going back and start creating?
Okay. Okay. So as Jordi said, and as the proposal said, that it's approved or adopted in get consensus in AFRINIC. In AFRINIC, yeah. So AFRINIC have IPv6 space, okay, unallocated. So they protect the unallocated resources of IPv6. For AFRINIC, we have both IP version 4 and IP version 6. Yes. And this policy is to protect the both IP version 4 and IP version 6 for AFRINIC.
Oh, okay. It depends on the resource.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
I was not getting it. Yes, please.
Yeah, okay, I'm Nikweno. I'm a member. Actually, I want to give some advice because I'm indifferent to the policy. I tend to agree with the previous speaker that perhaps this is better as a global policy. And so I would rather recommend you use that approach. But in the meantime, I can use it to illustrate or give you some advice. One, I think you should be probably coordinated with the author in AFRINIC also. That's Aftab Siddiqui or some such name. And you probably should also fine tune it towards us, meaning make it such that AFRINIC feels some ownership on it.
Let me explain that.
Finish.
Okay.
You know, maybe in your area, I am nobody, but here I'm somebody.
I took the mic from him.
Yeah, maybe here I'm somebody, and I'm an old man too, so you should allow me. It takes me a lot of effort to come, okay? Because Madvi also noted that because we are in a hurry, we actually cut and pasted, and that's why the AFRINIC showed up there. See, if we had really tried to own the policy, you would have seen that all these things won't be there. But because we seem to be trigger happy in a hurry, that's why we're having this problem. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ok, encore une fois, Gaylor Binemo de la RDC.
I'm not really, I'm from DRC. I'm not in line with the details. I'd like you to, how do you think, or AFRINIC should implement its policy due to this policy, say it was already proposed by LAPNIC and they experienced risks long term, and how can we allow AFRINIC to be to tackle this policy and be successful?
Experience from that side, and probably we can share. I know it works like that way among the RIRs. Part of the development sometimes is shared. Okay, so especially in RPKI there is a lot of sharing. So we have the experience from AFRINIC. In a few weeks, I think it will be also adopted, I believe, by RIPE and so on. So.
And we trust that AFRINIC staff can build it.
Hello, okay, Alain Aina again. Just to add something that for clarity here is that when you are doing RPKI, you don't withdraw ROA. You have to revoke ROA. You have to revoke ROA. So that you have to revoke ROA.
Yes, exactly.
You cannot, if you can't do that. So that's why
exactly.
I think,
Right.
okay, I've not had time to look at it, but these things may have, because you have a ROA AS0, you want to allocate some of these things, then you need to revoke, issue a new one and revoke the old one, etc. It has the process, and the process need to be well thought about it. And again,
so but Alan, so what's your opinion about the core idea of the policy?
Sorry?
What's your opinion about the core idea of the policy?
I'm not hearing it.
He said yes already. Okay.
As I said, I like this, so I've sacrificed my life for RPKI, so I like this one. Okay. But I will even, I want to take this in my pocket. Then I'll ask more. Why are we now enforcing everybody to go for RPKI, get certificate, everybody should go for ROA? Okay, so but anyway, let's have one, then we talk.
Okay, thank you.
I cannot believe that.
Thank you very much. My name is Maelmon from DRC. I'd like to thank Jordi for all policies that you are proposing. We have many. We are not able to follow all of them, but for this AFRINIC has consensus, because AFRINIC was for IPv6 and IPv4. And this policy will really bring impact to other policies. Why don't you do that as a global policy, despite of going from region to region to work at level of RNO? Why the people that are at RNO adopt them? That's why we need to do that. You think that it has a real impact? In the 5 registries, you have to work at a global level, and we have to wait at a global level. You should adopt here. This is my opinion.
Again, let me explain that this policy was actually done by AFTAF, which is part of the is the representative of the ISO AC, and he knows very well the process, and he decided that different people is proposing it in different regions. Why we don't go for a global policy? Because a global policy requires that exactly the same text is approved in the 5 regions.
No flexibility to
if
change
one
text.
region don't approve it, you are done. You cannot keep going. So it's better, because the result is the same, it's better going in region by region, and then if it makes sense, we go for a global policy, but we don't need it probably, okay? So it's much better to let's say,
To adjust it
perhaps
to our
60% if 3 regions approve it, that's just 0%. That's it.
As Mr. a board member of AFRINIC, not speaking for the board, not speaking for AFRINIC, not speaking for Angola or
I'm
whoever.
speaking for yourself.
Okay, I did a disclosure. There was a discussion about whether this can become a global policy. I don't have any opinion for or against this policy. I'm completely neutral on it. In terms of global policy proposals, from what I understood, I was the author of one of the global policy proposal. It should be a policy which requires an action from PTI, YANA. In this case, I don't know whether it requires an action from PTI. And I have a clarification question. I mean, does this cover legacy address space or not? I'm just curious. Thank you.
No. It's for the space or space administrated by AFRINIC only. It's not for legacy space. It's not cover legacy space. Yeah. It's covered the space unallocated by AFRINIC. Okay. Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly.
So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We want to thank the authors, and we would take a decision. I was just about to, 1 second. So we have listened to the authors and we have listened to the comments, and based on the response from the floor to the comments, we think that this policy has reached consensus. Rough consensus, and we're pushing it to the last call. Thank you so much. And this is the last proposal for today. And I don't know if we have any announcement from staff or anything. Okay, yes, please.
Good evening all, and thanks for staying throughout the day and for actively contributing to the policy development process. We thank you very much. We just want to encourage you again to turn up tomorrow morning. We continue with the policy discussions. So if we start, just 1 minute. Madam Maimuna, you have something to say? Please.
I don't know if the chair allows me, co-chair. It is about the agenda tomorrow.
Okay, please go on.
Co-chair, can you please switch off your microphone? Co-chair, can you please switch off your microphone?
1 day ago, for the 5th of December, we have